Yo, what's up, Ryback? Welcome back to the show. Boom.
Thanks for having me, guy. How you guys doing?
All
All
right.
right.
Yo, I was on YouTube. I always get these little things that says, which I'm sure you get them too, that says recommended for you, and then they'll send you shit that you think you'd be interested in.
Yeah.
I saw one where you're like you were eating these burgers in a car, and you were comparing them. You know.
Yeah.
But then I also saw that you're doing hot sauce and like a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah. That's so I started the YouTube like 6 months ago. I think we're about to hit 200,000 subscribers.
Right.
I wanted to do, because I do all the social media stuff for Feed Me More Nutrition and the podcast. And when I left WWE,
So
I didn't want to
real quick.
Yeah.
You have a podcast, and in that podcast, you just talk about everything or just nutrition? Or
Oh,
whatever,
the podcast is a conversation with the big guy Ryback. So every week I have a guest on with either pro wrestlers, doctors, health and fitness, nutrition. I've had psychologists. I like just to learn. So I just have a wide range of people
Right.
and try to offer that. Then I got that Raj Giri guy from Wrestling Inc. We do the wrestling report, and then we get that, and then we take the clips for that for YouTube as well. And then I always end it with a little motivation, little motivational thought of the week sort of thing. So 2-hour show every week. I've been doing it for 3 years, and it's evolved. Did it with the porn star for a bit. I did it with the guy that used to manage for me before he got caught stealing, and then now doing it. This is the show I kind of always wanted to do, but took me a while to get there.
Now,
so.
would the porn star be Disco's favorite porn star, TT Boy? Nothing? Okay, go
Good
ahead.
old Phoenix Marie, Melissa.
Let me ask you a question.
She's very hot.
Let me ask you a question. We've discussed this because I play fantasy football, and stuff and everything, and we were talking about getting like Lisa Ann
Yep.
is like she's like a fantasy guru now.
Yeah.
She's on the serious radio stuff and everything. Bro, when you're on like with Phoenix, like we do this podcast, then you're a fan of Joe Rogan, obviously.
Yeah,
So it's like we all get inspired by doing podcasts because we feel like, hey, we can have anybody on the show that we want, especially somebody you want to have a discussion with, or want to examine or probe, pick their brain, right?
Yeah.
So what if Phoenix Marie, what interests her? Like when you were doing the podcast with her, what were her interests?
No, so I don't know the dynamic between us. I met her in Australia at a bar. Had no idea who she was at the time. Zack Ryder flipped out. Me, him, and Miz were by each other, and these security guys brought us to this club, completely dead. And she walks by, and the Zack Ryder flipped out. So me and Miz start a conversation and talk to her and exchange numbers with her. She moves to Vegas from LA. I had the whole thing with the guy that was doing the podcast with me that was a friend for a long time, caught him stealing. He quit the show, and I was under contract where I, at that point in time, kind of liked someone to bounce off of, had someone with me, and she was like, oh, I'd love to do it. And so I go, please. And so she started coming over every week, and we just started recording. But the show, she's very... Phoenix she's a really good human being, but she's very sexual, obviously, with her profession. But it would be almost more where she was a little more. She would kind of turn everything into sex, and then I would like Jesus Phoenix and kind of keep it on track. But we always had a good dynamic. We did great listens with her on the show, and it was I had a good time. But it's like you got to kind of. The show with her was an entirely different energy than the show I did before and the show that I do now. And I've had her back on since. And like me and her do things and hang out and get along great, man. We have a good chemistry, but she's more sexual as far as we could be talking about, I don't know, something that has nothing, the coronavirus, and she'll want to all of a sudden it'll be about shoving something up her ass. So.
Right. Well, that's the thing I've noticed about because when we do because I work at the club. And they have a porn star every Friday and Saturday night, right? And the one thing is literally 1 out of 5 of them are like hot in person.
Yeah.
A lot of these porn stars are not. I don't know. Like if you see a porn and the girl's in shape, there's probably a 75% chance that's the best that she's looked in a month. So it's because a lot of them are way more overweight than I thought they were, right? Mm-hmm. But the one thing I did notice is that the porn stars just always ran. If you're having a conversation, a very brief one, it's almost like I think they have to. They're always performing. They always have to turn the conversation into sex.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. Like the porn stars are kind of like it's like their life is built around sex, and like that's all they care about.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, obviously, to get into it too, I think they have there's all different. I feel like you meet some, like Phoenix has like a normal family, which is really, as far as normal as like mother, father, brother, sisters. They all know what she does. She didn't have like a screwed up childhood. And then you have others that have like the traumatic childhoods, and I've met them, and I've had several of them on this show. It's honestly, it's, for me, conversation wise, it's always, it's a lot of fun, but it always goes to that regardless.
Right.
And it's just the way that it is. And
Would you equate
you want to talk about Kobe and his daughter, and she wants to talk about like stepdaughter sex.
Equate it,
perfect. That's exactly what it.
Ryback.
Yes.
Would you equate it to almost like probably a person talking to a wrestler, and now he wants to do is talk about wrestling,
it's the bubble.
Yeah,
100. I was going to say that when Disco it's very, that's what actually made the show work. There's a lot of similar things between actually the two businesses too, on the whole political side and all that. And
you know why? You know why? That Lisa Ann had sent me her book, and she was like, "I want you to read my book, and then I'll come on the show." And so when I was reading her book, I was like, bro, this girl's like a wrestler. Same thing. Working late at night, drugs,
little money, but people think they make more even. Right. They're getting used for these promoters and for the video people, producers. And
there was a lot of parallels.
Yeah. It's like that with all promotions.
It's like no union, Yeah,
there's nothing. Nobody looking out for the girls.
That's when you're ripe for exploitation, i.e. wrestling, i.e. porn. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
no matter who you work for, man, they're a bitch. If you work for other people, it doesn't matter how cool the job looks, and it's just a matter is the money worth it at the end of the day.
Right.
Do you think that you turned off you're obviously because you're a famous wrestler, your audience is going to come from your wrestling audience and stuff. Do you think that your wrestling fans that follow you were turned off by that?
Yes and no. So the problem with that is I went through a period there with my injuries, man, and I don't know if when you leave, I left the way that I did, and it's gone through phases. Like now I feel like I'm pretty much back to normal. But man, I didn't want to talk about wrestling for a bit either. And she wasn't current on the product. So there was a stretch there where I actually got away from actually talking about wrestling, and the numbers did dip down eventually. It didn't right away, but then when I eventually brought wrestling back and then brought Raj on over there and started doing it in a better way and enjoying talking about it again, the numbers started coming up again. So and I've gone through phases with that.
Well, here's what happens. I want to just comment on both those things you brought up. A lot of times when people first get out of WWE, and I'll call them and I'm like, yo, man, do you want to do some shots in Mexico? They're like, bro, I don't want to know shit about wrestling. Yeah. And so I understand that, which is true, bro. You just went through that concentration camp called the wrestling business. Because, super traumatic. The politics, the bullshit, the backstabbing, the always having to look a certain way, being lied to, all that bullshit. We already know it. Everybody's talked about it. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up was what was the second thing you mentioned? I'm sorry.
What was I went through periods of talking about wrestling and through the phases, and then I'm just trying to think. Then we brought it back on, having Raj back on and talking about it.
Oh, so that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So I first started podcasting about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So I was one of the first ones. I think the only other guy out there might have been Colt Cabana, maybe Meltzer. And then a lot of wrestlers, because I said I didn't want to talk about wrestling, so I was talking about politics, pop culture, anything that interested me, and wrestling.
Same.
Then there were other guys that they were like, "Fuck wrestling, I want to talk about other shit." But at the end of the day, if you're gonna listen to to let's say a Shaquille O'Neal podcast, you want to hear about basketball.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day,
the bread and butter.
To talk about wrestling, right? Yeah.
And it's hard. It doesn't translate to other things, and as well known as wrestlers can be, unless you're one of the, even guys, like a Stone Cold and The Rock, until they The Rock went and got big into movies, but even then, everything they do, it's wrestling oriented until The Rock's at another level now where he's outside of that. But man, and that's just the way it is in the wrestling world and in sports in general. That you almost you can't turn your back on what made you in a way, even though you want to. We get burnt out, and I think talking about it sometimes. And for me, it was really difficult because I wanted to still be doing it, didn't want to leave, so it was a really tough thing. But And we all go through that, but our audience, I found I can talk what I want to talk about with the guest. I give them the wrestling on the second part of the show, and I give them the motivation at the end, and I kind of blend it all together. That way, if they don't want to tune into the other stuff, they're more than welcome to leave, and give them what they want every week.
What was that thing
I want to bring something up.
Yeah.
Like a lot of our listeners are like people that like don't even not a lot of people watch. That's the whole thing. There's wrestling fans out there that don't watch wrestling anymore. They just the product today. They just don't watch it.
Yep.
This is what I find fascinating about the product today and the fans that it draws. Bro, do you see like the bulk of like the advertisers that hit these podcasts and stuff? Everything like what they're advertising. This to me is fascinating, bro. And I'm looking at the wrestling fans these days, and you look at the arenas, and you look at the people in the crowd.
Yep.
And it's like
the Jericho Cruise.
Well, you look at the Jericho Cruise. You look at the people there, and bro, these are like some of our top advertisers. Sexual dysfunction pills.
Yep.
Personal hygiene.
Yep.
Manscaped. Tiege Hanley for facial wash and stuff like that. And I'm looking at. I keep saying this. It's like, guys, look at the fans that you guys are drawing to this product these days. It's like literally, it's like people that like have bad hygiene and stuff, and advertisers are literally seeing this and targeting this market with these products. And I'm like, it's like, and it's good to have like a guy like you will come on and I'm like, you'll have a porn star on with you.